I am here with Paul Fraser, our National Director for Multiplication for the Pentecostal Assemblies of Canada. And we're going to just have some conversation around multiplication in our nation. And so, Paul, great to have you with us.
It's great to be on here, Len, and that is a wild, long job title, but it is true. I am the National Church Multiplication Coordinator, and I'm wearing a YC Alberta shirt, not an ACDC shirt, just in case anyone was wondering.
Yeah, which I was actually one of those who was wondering. So thanks for the clarification on that. That's really helpful. Hey, Paul, a lot of people who are going to be watching this video will already know who you are, but for those who don't, just tell us a little bit about, your world and how you got into this job and, what you do.
Just quickly, was a youth pastor for many years, worked at a local church, did young adults and kids there, and moved on to Milledge Christian School and became a campus pastor and on to district office and did similar to what you're doing, Len, as it relates to church planting, and did, again, just youth directing. And then, just the tail end of that 12-year season, we had a pretty robust church planting initiative and goal. And so we needed someone to direct it. And so Dave Knudsen was, and some of Dave, was kind of our first guy, but then moved to actually plant a church. And I slid into that role for the last couple of years. And then this national coordinator role came up, and it's a very great God story, but ended up being at the right place at the right time and the right people and the right questions, and everything just fell into line, and became a national church multiplication coordinator, which we hadn't had really anyone in that role since the 80s. And so now I'm here to support our districts and the national vision of church multiplication.
So speaking of vision, what is the big picture? What is the vision for the Multiply Network in Canada?
So I started October 2017. So I've only been in the role just 2.5 years. And within the first 2 weeks, we were having a national summit in Montreal to talk through what are the next steps for church multiplication PAOC. And one of the things that became clear to me, and I think to us, was that we needed a network, an internal network to drive church multiplication. And so for the next 8 months, we worked hard to launch at our general conference in 2018 to launch the Multiply Network, and to be, again, an internal network to drive church multiplication. So it's been a work in progress. We didn't have all of it in place. At the beginning, we just wanted to tell stories across the nation, and we've done that. But behind the scenes, we wanted to start working towards becoming a full service network. And what that means is we want to be a network for our fellowship that will work on recruitment all the way through the process of pre-launch and launch, and maybe even a couple years into the season of church planting, that there's coaching and resourcing along the way. So that's something that's emerged in my heart, in conversations with you and the other lead team members. That's a big part of what we want to do, is we want to become a full service network. We want to be relationally connected. We don't want just to be, a group that's just together because we all fly the same flag. No, we want to be together because we're friends. We like each other. We can learn from each other. We can challenge one another. We can keep each other accountable. And then we also, if there was a third vision piece we had, is we want to continue to be a resource center. Man, it'd be great someday, that a church planter or a leader that's thinking about doing a multi-site, they go, we're thinking about doing some church multiplication. You know who we need to call? Paul at the Multiply Network. Right. That's kind of the goal. We have other church planting networks that we support and get along with, and that's fine. And we're grateful for them. But we also have a vision to be a network like that for our own group.
That's great. Awesome. Well, it goes without saying that the pandemic and COVID-19 and so on has just turned everything on its head, including, efforts to multiply churches and ministries. So I'd be curious to hear your perspective, because you've got a national perspective. I mean, from Vancouver Island to Newfoundland kind of idea. What's happening in the midst of this? Are churches still multiplying? And if they are, what are they doing? How are they doing it? Like, what do things look like right now
Yeah.
across the nation?
Yeah, it's a good question. Lots of things obviously have been paused. We had 5 churches that were in Western Ontario that were going to launch this Easter Sunday, this
Right.
past Easter, and obviously couldn't do that because of restrictions. I mean, if we were counting, and I just joke about this, but if we were counting all of our online campuses, we're up about 850. Like if you were to count those, we've been online, we've got more of a footprint. We're definitely multiplying. But one of the things I think that our church plants are seeing is that this decentralization has actually empowered more leaders, because there is a mindset out there that people think, well, I can only volunteer at church. That's the only way, I can serve at church or at Sunday or at Wednesday or whatever. And I think that this decentralization has kind of challenged some leaders to go, wait, well, I can set up a Zoom call and do a small group. I've heard several stories of church plants that the pastor doesn't even know that new small groups are showing up until they see them on Facebook, of people just taking initiative
Right.
and going through Ephesians and reading the scriptures together, praying together. They're doing online prayer meetings. I'm hearing some church plants going, we were doing prayer meetings at so and so's house, and we get 3 or 4, but now we have 30 or 40 on the call.
Mm-hmm.
I think outreach. I think people are focusing more on their neighbors. They don't maybe have as many activities to go to at the church. There's some that, you got Wednesday night prayer night, Friday night youth,
Mm-hmm.
Saturday night young adults, Sunday morning service. And it's like, when do you have time for neighbors? And they're going,
Mm-hmm.
man, I got time for my neighbors. So I think people are, and then obviously, with the crisis, there's some people that need food. There's other people that have actual physical needs that people are feeling compassion for, which is so great. And going out delivering groceries to seniors, and phone calls are happening. Those this was such an old thing that, the prayer chain. Do you remember the prayer chain?
Or the phone tree.
The phone tree. Now that's coming back, and so everyone's phoning one another. Hey, are you doing okay? And I think this is breathing life again. Minus the grieving and the loss and people, dying alone and losing, like there's just so much going on that's maybe negative about this, and not maybe negative, is negative. But there may be a silver lining in this for us as the church, where maybe God's awakening something in us. And so I think our church plants and our church planters and are I think transitioning pretty well, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would echo that, Paul. I mean, I think it's been interesting to watch the level of pastoral care across the board increase.
Yeah.
It's been encouraging to see community engagement being a very strong value. And just even the reports of the level of sort of online engagement, hard to judge and accurately, but the level of online engagement increasing. So like you say, nobody's going to ask or pray for a pandemic, but there are some good things that God's doing in the midst of it. So most churches have gone online, and in many respects, like I said, it's turned what we do and how we do it on its head, and that's disconcerting, because we've been pretty good at doing church in one way or another. So from your perspective, how do churches stay on mission when everything's changed, when the method has changed, when staffing may have changed, when everything's upside down? How do churches stay on mission?
Well, I think one of the big questions that's happening, and I'm happy to see it amongst our leaders, is, on the one hand, we're super excited about the views that we're getting about our online engagement. I've heard some great reports from pastors that are going, I'm getting people from my community listening, and it's like, it's changing how I speak. And it's like, I think that's a good thing. I think that you're aware, so that when we do re-centralize and people do show up, that you'll have a context of, how to relate to the community, and
Mhm.
then also know what's happening in the community. But I think we've also are also being sober minded in thinking that viewers aren't engagers, and
Mhm.
trying to be missional with our engagement. That, I don't know if anyone's cracked the code on that, and it's going to continue to be a debate even when we do recentralize.
Mhm.
I don't think online's going away. So how are we going to turn them into engagers? I think we had a little bit of an uphill climb to get people online. Maybe some of our older congregants were, maybe resistors initially, not all, but some.
Mhm.
I think it's going to be hard, as we recentralize and get back to meeting, to get people offline.
Mhm.
I'm wondering if this online experience, you wake up, you go to your living room and turn, at least that's we do. We all just kind of gather in our living room and turn on the computer and stream 2 or 3 services,
Mhm.
and it it may feed the consumerism that's already there in church. So I don't know. It's funny, like I'm a Gen Xer, and so all the Gen Xers out there, Len, I know you are as well.
Yeah.
We kind of made fun of TV evangelists growing up. Like we kind of mocked them, and now we are them. And
Yeah.
so, but we don't want to be just broadcasters. So I think this has awoken us to uh, to be more missional in the way we develop people. I think this has exposed our lack of discipleship,
Mhm.
because people were literally panicking. Uh, how will the church exist if we don't have a Sunday morning experience? And so
Right.
we just quickly had to. And I'm totally for Sunday morning experiences, but I think people were like panicking. And the reality is, it's like, well, that's only one day. What are we doing the other 6 days?
Mhm.
And I think that, for churches to be missional, I think we have to, I hope we re-centralize around discipleship. I hope
Mhm.
that that
Right.
becomes the thing that we just go, this is what we're going to be about. And not just in like, we throw it up on the wall and it's part of our mission statement. We believe in disciples, but actually, we actually start running everything we do through that filter. Is this
Mhm.
making disciples? And if it isn't, then
Right.
the filter closes, and we don't allow it through. And so I think, you know maybe a long answer to a short question is, we've got to get back to that discipleship to be missional. And the second thing is, I think churches need to just pick a few crises and not all of them, and
Mhm.
just be really great at a couple of them, because there's not just the physical crisis of COVID. There's the economic, there's mental illness, depression, relational stress. There's emotional stress. There's how are we going to deal with the grieving? People aren't able to grieve properly. Not doing, unfortunately, having funerals online. Like
Mhm.
it's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And I think there's just so much loss in this season. So what can we do? We're not going to be able to solve, not one local church can solve it all. So what are a few things that you can do?
Mhm.
And I think that will help us stay missional. And if there was a third thing, let the actions of your missional impulse come from your core values.
Mhm.
So who are you as a church? What crises are there in your community? And what are your core, like, how could your core values be expressed to help meet that need? I
Right.
think that's a great place to start, is just to go back to the DNA of who your church is, and just go, here's who we are. We're about community, we're about relationship. So we're going to just take on these two things.
Mhm.
Let it be expressed from your core values, because I think it'll be a much easier sell to your congregation, because it's already a part of who you are, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, those are great thoughts, Paul, and lots there to chew on. But you've already alluded to it. I mean, eventually the restrictions are going to lift, and they're probably not going to lift just overnight. It's not going to be like, okay,
Right,
everybody just go back to normal. It'll
right.
probably be incremental. I think all of us have identified that, um, and that actually might put uh, smaller churches, in a better position, because they're already sort of set up for a smaller crowd. Again, no judgment there, just
Yeah.
observation. Um, it's going to be challenging for mid to large size churches maybe even more so for our largest churches, that have 800, 900, 1,000 people who show up, in any given service. So with this incremental lifting, any ideas about sort of how to re-engage personally, or re-centralize, as you've put it, while still, respecting the incremental shifting that's going to happen?
Great question, and more brilliant minds than me.
This is, by the way, where you earn your paycheck, right here.
Okay. Well, that no pressure. Okay.
Yeah.
Let me clear my throat and then, just hum and haw. And yeah, like I sit on have the privilege of being on a coaching call with national leaders all over Canada and the US. And if you've been watching the news, some states are opening up earlier, trying new things. I think some provinces in Canada are going to open up earlier than others. So I think it's going to be region by region how it'll look. And I don't think anyone's going to, have the same thing. It's just going to be different for each one. I think if you are a leader of a bigger church, you need to be thinking longer, a longer play rather than a quick fix.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're going to be online longer than others, even if you break down into smaller groups. And I'm not I have no idea what it's going to be like in BC. But I know in Alberta, they're saying no gatherings of 15 or more till the end of August.
Mm-hmm.
So even smaller churches have to be thinking longer
Right.
here. And,
Right.
and so what does that mean? And I know we're all, really working, praying and believing that we can get back together. But I think you need to be thinking that this online thing is going to be here for, May, June, July, maybe August, and a September launch. And even a September launch, they're not going to open it up to thousands of people if your church is that size. So I'm interested. By the way, I think our biggest debate that's going to come out of this pandemic and might be our biggest debate moving forward. It won't be, for our PAOC family, alcohol, or, it won't be, some of those social issues that we, certainly have opinions about. I actually think, and it might not even be eschatology. It's not going to be maybe even missiology. I think it's going to be ecclesiology. I think we're going to come out of this asking ourselves, what actually is the church, and what's the ecclesiological minimum for you to be a church? And so I think the multi-site revolution, I think it's going to do one of two things. I'm just wondering. I think it's actually going to be maybe smaller. Like, we're going to look at multi-sites being more of them and smaller. They might even be microsites, of 50 or less or whatever. Or I'm wondering, will the multi-site revolution turn, rather than having multi-sites, we just turn them into self-governing churches?
Right.
So I don't think multi-sites are going to just stay where they're at. I think there's going to be an interesting debate moving forward about multi-sites. And I think for the interim, I think bigger churches are going to have more sites with less people. And I think that's going to create some staffing challenges. So I actually think we're going to have to lean a lot on our lay leaders, which I'm excited about, because we're going to have to call them forth to be lay pastors, to be hosts, to pastor those 50 people. So I'm excited to see where else is going to go, but I think you have to be thinking longer than shorter as it relates to being online.
Right. So Paul, as we bring this to a close, just can you bring a word of encouragement, a thought that might be, another thought that might be helpful, not that the others haven't been, but something that's just going to encourage those who are watching.
Paul, for once in your life, would you bring a helpful thought? Like, we've been on here for 10 minutes and nothing's been helpful yet.
Already.
Would you just,
I'm inviting you to end strong, Paul.
If I can just, give a last decade short snapshot, we're essentially in, a slight increase, but really close to a plateau. And in the last 10 years, of the churches we've planted and started, like almost 90% of them are still around,
Mm,
which I think is really exciting for us as a movement.
right.
And did you know that almost 1 in 5 churches in our fellowship right now are 10 years or younger? So this 100-year-old movement that we're in, it's not an old fuddy-duddy, like, well, we only got churches from the 60s and 70s. No, like almost 1 in 5 of them were started in the last 10 years. So we're doing well.
Mhm.
Here's the encouragement though. And maybe the other side of the coin is that we're closing more self-governing churches than we're starting.
Mm,
We're growing in satellites, campuses, missional initiatives. But so here's the encouragement. I think we need to dream for a bigger decade.
mm,
I just, and I don't have time to unpack it all, but we need to probably double or triple our output. And we've got to be willing just to hit the start and just go
mm.
and not have it all figured out. Because I think maybe we're trying to be too calculated. And I'm just wondering if we need more people just to like ready, shoot, aim. Just kind of like let's figure out the aiming while it's in the air.
Yeah, yeah.
Build the airplane while it's in the air.
Mhm.
Because I think we're going to see the rate of closure of churches not decrease, but probably increase. So for us to take ground in Canada, we need to be thinking double or triple the amount of churches we need to plant. And so my encouragement would be to go to the Lord and ask,
Mhm.
are we supposed to multiply? Are we supposed to multiply? And I think I already know the answer that God's going to tell you. Uh, but
It's like praying for
let it
patience, Paul.
hear it from him. Don't hear it from me. It'll carry so much more power. But
Yeah.
I feel like that's the trajectory we need to be on. Thanks, Len, for doing all the great stuff you're doing and leading so well in BCYD. And love working with you. Love your whole team there. And just excited to see what's ahead for your district.
Thanks so much, Paul. And I do appreciate your time today, just sharing a little bit of what's happening across the nation with us and giving us some perspective that way. If people want to track you down, if they want to connect with you, what's the best way to do that?
You could just send me an email, paul.fraser@paoc.org. That's a great way. You could track me down on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. It's Coach Fraser, but instead of an F, it's a PH. So it's lame.
Okay.
I get it. Coach Fraser. But anyways, yeah, happy to meet with you. Happy to offer whatever I can to help you move multiplication forward in your journey. So thanks.
Great. Thanks again, Paul. We'll see you again soon.
Thanks.